Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. I have a layout process video for you today for the first challenge of the CKC group, which happens to be a sketch challenge. Now this sketch is posted over at A Cherry on Top because that was the source of our kit inspiration this month around. Here is a peek at that sketch, and I'm going to interpret this in a few different ways. I don't have a lot of pattern paper in my kit this month, so I'm going to pull out just a couple of pieces, and then I'm going to add a layer of mixed media, which turns out to be just stamping. So don't be scared if mixed media is not your thing. This one's really easy. And the circle where the title is, I'm going to really pick up on the circles in this one. And I am going to do a birthday layout since it had a birthday theme and I have some birthday stories to tell. So those are the elements I'm going to pick up on that sketch. As I've been talking about my plans, I have started pulling out the items from my stash that I want to use, and notice that these birthday photos have circular photos of the number 15 for her 15th birthday. So this worked really well with this sketch because I did want to indeed pick up on that circle title element, and my photos were already cropped into circles because it happens to be a shape that I love to use. The next thing to think about is how I'm going to lay out my photos. Now, this was just a single page sketch, and I could, in my classic style, cram all these photos onto one page, but I'm going to go ahead and stretch it out to 2 pages, and you'll see how the elements from the single page sketch can carry over easily into 2 pages. And figuring out how I want my photos to flow in terms of storytelling, I get that down and then clean up my photos and decide which pattern papers I'm going to use as mats. Now this green pattern paper I liked the color of, but it has this egg pattern on the background, which if you really stretch the birthday theme, you could get there. But I want to try and eliminate as many of those egg shapes as I can and just get kind of the color around the edges. So when I mount my photos on here, and my printer printed my photos crooked, so you can see me trimming down excess white crooked space off the edges. But as I was saying, as I put these photos on here, I'm going to try and cover up as much of the egg shape, and just a tiny smidge peeking around just gives a little bit of color and texture without it actually reading as an egg shape, so I'm okay with that. And then the other side, I'm going to use less of that pattern and cover most of it up with the photos. So again, it's just the color peeking around. And then my second paper layer is going to be this bright yellow, and I'm going to have just a small amount on the left-hand side and a larger amount on the right-hand side. And that starts to pick up on the paper layers from the sketch. So I'm going to go ahead and get my blocks adhered together with some temporary adhesive in case I need to adjust anything. My background mixed media layer is going to end up being a little bit of stamping in lieu of extra pattern paper because, like I said, I don't have a lot in this kit this month. And you'll see how I get that going on. I'm going to pull out a stamp, and the stamp set that I had in my kit this month had a nice big heart in there, and I thought, well, that'd be a good way to add some pattern and texture without pattern paper. I am using this mint tape from scrapbook.com, and this is new to me, and so far I am loving it. It's pretty much like a post-it note kind of tape, but I really like it for these kind of techniques where I can mask off edges and do a little bit of inking or whatnot in there and have some way to keep the rest of my project safe. So I am going to match up a bit of blue with this felt that I'm going to use later on in the project, and with a second generation stamping, the color is more what I like it to be. So if you're not really a stamper, what you do is ink up your stamp it once off on a scratch piece of paper, and then stamp a second time onto your project. And that is called second generation stamping. As I'm stamping these hearts, I am just kind of offsetting them into staggered rows. And that mint tape will give me crisp edges, which will mimic the edge of a piece of pattern paper. And I'm going to redefine that edge with a little bit of pin work, and that gives me a faux pattern paper in my background. I'm going to repeat that process up here at the top, and here you'll notice that, oops, I had a full inked stamp there up at the top, and I thought maybe I could lift some of the ink off if I did it right away, but no, that ink soaks into the paper too quickly. So I am going to fix my mistake by repeating my mistake. And instead of fully inking all the hearts, I am going to selectively ink up a few of the hearts in full ink, and I'm kind of choosing that visual triangle to inform which hearts to use for that full inking. And then I make a little bit of a second mistake with my pen work, so I mimic that mistake all around and give my pen work extra edges. And that is my faux pattern paper layer in the background with really simple mixed media techniques. I'm going to repeat that over on the second page, but because my second page is just larger in scale, and that's one way I will stretch a single page sketch to a 2-page layout, is that the second page will mimic the first page just in a different scale. So this one, this photo block is bigger and its pattern paper blocks are bigger. So giving myself some markings with pencil, that saves me time, so I don't have to stamp all that whole center section. And I can still get a nice flow to these hearts, and they are imperfect. Some of the hearts' staggered lines don't line up perfectly, but you know what? Once you get all of the elements onto this page, you're not going to notice as much. And I did repeat the full stamped hearts with the second gen stamped hearts to that second page also. All right, I got my photos punched out, those circular photos punched out with one of my punches, and I did pre-size those photos specifically knowing that I had that size punch. And I'm getting my title set up. At first I thought I was going to say birthday snapshots, but then I realized that there were numbers on this Vicki Boutin sticker sheet that I was using that I could do the number 15 with. So instead of using one of the photos that I had punched out, I am going to use that number. And here is where I am bringing in more circular elements. And I knew I was going to do this from the beginning. I have some felt in my kit this month, my Counterfeit Kit. And if you haven't seen my kit build, I will link you up to that. And I like to die cut felt. If you've never die cut felt, go do it. It is so much fun. And I'm going to use all of these felt circles to kind of mimic confetti. It picks up on the original circle in the sketch, as well as it will add a lot of motion and movement to this layout. So right now I just have a few felt hearts, and notice I used one of them to back the 15 on my title, but I'm going to need more. I mean, you can see it's pretty dinky on just those few felt circles on this layout. So after punching out a bunch more felt circles, and some of the felt I had to really squeeze those circles onto, and I got chopped off edges, but that's okay because I can purposefully align some of those felt circles to the edges of my paper for a more organic feel, and that helps me stretch my felt material as much as possible. Whenever I'm working with felt, I do use a liquid glue with that because that's going to be the best way to get that kind of fuzzy fiber to stick to everything. Even here you can see I'm mounting my title up on foam dots. I'm going to add extra liquid glue to those foam dots before I adhere that down so that it can really soak in and adhere to that texture of the felt. I am popping up my other 15s on foam, and I'm going to sprinkle them across the layout for that movement element that goes along with those felt circles. Notice the big circle in the middle of my layout. I did glue it just to the left half. Once the glue's dry, I'm going to cut it and adhere the cut off piece to the right half, and that helps carry the layout design across both pages even when it's in my album. And then down here, I am stamping my journaling lines, again, to carry across both pages of this layout once it's in my album. And here's where I cut that felt, and I will glue it down on the other side. When I did that, I realized I hadn't actually adhered the number 15 on my title, so it fell off, and I got that glued back on. And then my felt circle is glued back on to stretch across the page, and the liquid glue also gives me a little wiggle room to get it to line up. Not that you're going to notice a very slight difference when it's in page protectors across an album. And the other element on this title sticker sheet from Vicki Boutin that I really liked was these gold arrows to point out just this cute little frog that my daughter picked out from the store. So I've got sprinkles going on with this layout with those arrows, some confetti dot sprinkles, some hearts, some butterflies, and I do carry that all over to the second page for that flow that I mentioned. And then I'm thinking about these candles on the sketch, and I thought at first that I might stamp and die cut some candles, But then I had another idea. This paper strip that I had cut off from the branding strip of the pattern paper had these colorful rectangles on them, and that kind of reminded me a little bit of candles. So this is my very subtle nod to those candles, and I did choose just 15 of those rectangles and split it across the page. And that is my nobody would ever notice probably unless I told them about it, but it is a nice little element that I added there. And then at this point, I'm feeling kind of at a loss for embellishing. I did add a couple of little critter stickers because my daughter likes critters, and of course that frog is a critter. And a cupcake sticker because there was a cupcake in the sketch, and I'm just going to leave it at that with the embellishing. It's really those felt circles add the flow and the texture and the movement, as hopefully you can see as we take a close-up look at these photos. So that is it for this time around. I hope you enjoyed something about this video. I would appreciate a thumbs up if you did. And I will be back in a couple of days with my Freebie Friday video. So I hope you will join me for that. And until then, have an artful day.